Okay, this video here is for completing problems part 3-1 in our 3D files. I'm going to go ahead and start here at the home page just because in this case we have to talk about how to download the files we need so that we can create the part that we're trying to create and also get the drawing completed that we need to complete. Now in this case where I want to look at is the home page. In this case I'm looking at period 2A, and underneath the beginning SolidWorks files here, if you left click on the beginning SolidWorks, you'll open a new window. And inside there, you'll see all the parts that we're going to complete during this little block that we're going to do up through Thanksgiving break. The first part I want to work on is part 3-1. Now there's two files there. There's a part 3-1.pdf and a part 3-1 drawing.pdf. The first one I'm going to open is the part 3-1. This will be the file we need to actually create the physical part. And then we'll come back and open part 3-1 drawing to look at the answer key for the drawing that we're trying to create. When opening part 3-1, it's going to open up in this window here in Schoology. The problem is this is a 3D PDF file. Schoology cannot work with 3D PDF files. So in order for this to work, you're actually going to physically have to download this. To do a download, you need to go up here next to the print button. There's a little down arrow. If you left click on that, that will allow you to download the file either to your desktop, to your H drive, or just to the download folder. I'm going to hit download. It's probably going to tell me where, or it's going to maybe even ask you to open with Adobe Acrobat. In this case, I'm going to open with Adobe Acrobat Reader. I'm going to say OK. Now in your case, you may have to go and look where the download files are. So that may mean you have to go in to your File Explorer and look under your downloads to see if the file's in there. If it is, double click on it, open in Adobe, and you'll be having access to the files that you need. Now when you get into Adobe Acrobat, you'll know you're there because the first thing it's going to have is this yellow bar at the top that says 3D content has been disabled. So in order to enable the 3D content features that we want to have here, you need to go to Options and go to this Trust this document one time only. By doing that, it will allow me now to click on each of these views and be able to see them in the main window. Now, what a 3D PDF file does is basically is a simulation of SolidWorks. It allows you to left click, hold your mouse, and you can actually rotate and look at the part that we're going to create today. Okay, if you ever want to get back to normal, you just click back on that view and it comes back into its normal shape. Now, basically at the bottom, I've given you four things to look at. What's called the isometric, which is what you currently see on the screen. My front view, which shows me some key elements, specifically the dimensions I need. My top view, again, showing me from the top position what some of the key elements are and dimensions. And then a right view. And what we're going to do is we're going to thumb through these views as we build this part to determine what dimensions and things I need to do. In addition to that, you're going to notice I have some directions written here. Okay, so for instance, up at the top here, it says complete the following part using SolidWorks, print the mass property sheet, which we'll get to at the end, for the part attached to the final drawing. What's really, really important over here, though, is the notes. It says you'll be creating the following part using the drawings and parameters identified below. The parameters I'm speaking of are the A, B, and C. Save the part using part 3-1 underscore your last name. For example, part 3-1 underscore Combs. So when you save this, I want your saving of all your files the same way. Now here's the most important piece right now, your unit system. The unit system today is IPS, which stands for inch, pound, and second. That means when we start our first part, we're going to start this in inches. Now with that said, I'm going to go ahead and get my SolidWorks up and running. So I pop my SolidWorks open and I'm going to do a file new. Now this is where things have changed. For the last several weeks, all we've been working on are these drawings right here, these templates and borders, and doing some flat layout work. Now we're changing our direction to three-dimensional. In that case, what we're going to do is we're actually going to start a real part file. And basically these two icons you see up here, which says inches and metric, are part files. So based on the units the direction is telling me, I have to pick one of these two to start today. Now we just said that drawing 3-1 is IPS, which is inches, pounds, and seconds. Therefore, we're going to come up here to where it says inches, left click on it, and hit OK. It's going to take a second to open up. Now, before we left for break, normally a piece of paper would pop up on the screen, and that's what we draw on. Now what we have is a gray open space. Okay, we're still going to use all our drawing tools that we normally use, but instead of paper, we're going to use planes. Okay, first thing I want you to notice here is in the middle of the screen, we have this blue icon called an origin. Now, if I hit my space bar and do an isometric view, what this does is basically it shows you, and you can look down here in this lower left-hand corner. This is your triad that indicates the direction of where your origin is placed. What I mean by that is that this spot right here identifies the 0, 0, 0 point of SOLIDWORKS drawing space. Okay, the reason I have a third 0 in there is now we've added in what's called the Z element. Okay, we've been working totally in 2D in the X and the Y, up and down, left and right. Now my Z allows it to add the third dimension, which is in and out of the screen. Okay, so in this case, this is a really important point to SOLIDWORKS. Everything we do in SOLIDWORKS has to relate to this origin. So it's really important that as we start to design stuff, that we have some kind of relationship to this origin, whether it's through a dimension or that we are drawing directly on top of that origin. SOLIDWORKS will get easily confused or give you error statements if you don't have your part or your design related to this origin. So as we begin to do our drawing, you're going to hear me reference this origin quite frequently. So pay attention to that. Now, when we start a new part, we have to pick a view that will work best for us. So going back to my PDF file, I'm going to look at these views here and determine which one would be the easiest or give me the most information to draw from. Now I'm looking at these views. I got a front, I've got my top, I've got my right, and we're used to those views because we did those in our hand drawings. I'm looking at these three views, and to me, it looks like the front view, or in this case, front plane, would provide the most information for me to draw from. So when I go back into my SOLIDWORKS here, I'm going to start a drawing or a sketch on a front plane. Now, to do the front plane, if you look over here to your left, where I'm circling around with my cursor, what you see here is what's called a design tree. You're going to hear that very frequently, me reference to it. You always want to look to your design tree, and as we begin designing our parts, you're going to notice that your design tree will start adding things to it. Each thing it adds is called a branch. So by the time we're done with a part, we'll see several branches over here that we can go back and look at and manipulate. One of the things I want to very strongly emphasize in these first drawings is if you make a mistake, no big deal. Do not delete the part. All we have to do is go back to somewhere on the design tree, pick the branch that has the mistake, and correct it. So make sure you don't throw things away. Let's go back and fix it. Now in this case, in this design tree, you're going to notice there are three planes here. We have a front, we have a top, and we have a right side view. Now if you recall, way back from the first quarter, we did all of our drawings with a front, a top, and a right side view. So nothing has changed from the hand drawings to the flat layouts now to the three-dimensional. Everything is still the same. Now in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick the front plane because we decided that the front plane would be the best view to start from. Now when I picked on that front plane, I want to look to the top here because now you have some tabs that we have to use. The tab I want to use and start with is the same tab we've been using the last several weeks, which is Sketch. So what I'm going to do is turn on the Sketch tab, and I'm going to turn on the word Sketch. And when I do that, notice that this here in the middle will go from blue to red, and the front plane will go flat to my screen, which is what we call normal to. So I turn on my Sketch, it turned towards me, that's the normal to, and now my icon, or my origin in the middle turned red. Red indicates that you are live, that you are drawing something. In addition, you'll notice in our design tree, suddenly I have the word Sketch 1 over here. So here comes the first branch being added into the tree. Now what I want to do today is I want to go ahead and draw out the figure in that front view. And the front view I'm looking at is basically I'm going to start at my origin with a line tool, and I'm going to draw out to my right. I'm going to draw up, over, up, over, up, over, and down. And then we'll come back and add on these dimensions. So with that said, I'll minimize this. I'm going to turn on my line tool. And again, it's important. I need to start at my origin. So when I get to the origin, you'll notice it turns yellow to indicate coincident. I will left click and pull to my right, horizontal line. Left click and pull up. Left click and pull in. Left click and pull, or excuse me, left click there and pull up. Pull in. Pull up. Pull over. And you're noticing as I pull these lines, SolidWorks is trying to give you some guides here. So I'm trying to use some of the guides to help me finish this up. So when I see this one here that shows up right there to indicate, hey, I'll go right to that point and I can go straight back down to close this figure. When I see that come up, I'm just going to left click and then pull straight down to where I touch back at that origin and left click again. Now when you do that, your tool is still active. So I'm going to deactivate that line tool by hitting escape. I'm going to hit my F key like we've done before to center everything up. Now you'll notice there's a kind of shade of blue here. This is a good indication that this figure is completely closed, and that's really important when we're doing three-dimensional modeling. In this case, the three-dimensional model that we're going to create, we have to have everything closed up. Now SolidWorks gives you a lot of things, and specifically with color. Okay, in this case, you're going to notice I have some black lines and I have some blue lines. Now black is what SolidWorks want. Black indicates that something's fully defined, and SolidWorks wants everything to be fully defined to be happy. In this case, blue means it's undefined or underdefined. And I can also tell because if I look down towards this bottom corner, it tells me it is underdefined. Now in order to define this, I need to add some key dimensions. Okay, just like we did when we did our flat layout. So let's go back into this view and see what dimensions I need to add in. So it looks like I need a 0.75, a 0.5 here, a 0.75 up here, a 1.75 from this line, this line here to this line here. I'm going to add those in right now by turning on my smart dimension. So I'm going to make this right here was 0.5. So I left click and type in 0.5 and hit enter. This right here was 0.75. Enter. This over here was 0.75. Enter. From this left line here to this right line here, pull down and go 1.75. Now, I still see blue, so there's a couple more dimensions I need to add. So let's go back to our our PDF file. It looks like the overall height here is letter B. Well, where does that come from? Well, that's right here in this box right to the right. It tells me that B is 2 inches tall. So going back into my SolidWorks, I'm going to click on this edge right here, pull to my left, and type in 2. Now, I need the overall length of this. It looks like I'm missing one more thing. So go back to here, and it shows me the length of this from left to right is letter A, which in this case is 3.30. Go back to SolidWorks, click on this bottom line and pull down and type in 3.30, enter. Okay, now, I think I'm missing still another dimension, so let's go look again. 0.5, 0.75, 2.0. Let me verify that this line is vertical. Oh, see, now if you notice, all these little symbols here are showing up. This line is not showing as vertical. So as we've done in the past, I'm going to left click on that line, come to my left and hit vertical. Okay, now you'll notice all of these lines have turned black. This is really, really important to understand. SolidWorks wants every sketch line to be black because what that tells it is that this part is fully defined. And how do I know for sure? Because down here in this lower right corner, it says fully defined. One of the things you've got to do when you work on these problems and you start these sketches is all sketches must be fully defined. If they're not, you're going to have a problem with your mass in the end. Now, one of the things that happens with students is they get a little trigger happy with their mouse, and all of a sudden they'll grab their middle mouse button and they get this thing twisted up. Okay, so now it's not flat to the screen. Well, here's the first shortcut I want to show you. Okay, to get my drawing flat back to the screen, I'm going to hit my space bar on my keyboard. You're going to see this pop-up box called orientation. Now you're probably going to see it with this big box around it. I'm not a fan of that box. It just is too much information for me. So I like to turn that box off by clicking on here. Okay? So again, I have this thing in the wrong orientation. I'm going to hit my space bar, and now what I can do is I can look at my views. Okay, if you look at these ones here, this is that very first reading we did at the first quarter. This is the unfolding of the box. So let's talk about each of these views. Here's the front of the box, the left of the box, the right of the box, the back of the box, the bottom of the box, and the top of the box. Now I could pick front because we know we're on the front plane and it would go back to normal. However, sometimes I don't know which plane I may be working on, or sometimes things get really twisted up. I don't know what I'm doing. So if I get twisted there, what I like to do is go space bar, and the view I like to pick is right here called normal to. No matter what you're doing, if you click on normal to, it will flatten it to the screen. Normal to. Okay? So I could either hit the front button or I could hit the normal to. Now another thing that's really common that happens to students the first time they do this, suddenly they get locked out of their sketch. And what I mean is suddenly the sketch goes gray on them. They go to start putting dimensions on and nothing's working. It's not working right. You can't, you're trying to change it. You keep clicking on it. Nothing's happening. The reason they can't be dimensioned is because you've turned the sketch off. Okay, there's nothing going on. The way to know is if you look up in the right-hand corner, normally when you're in sketch mode, you'll see a red X and a drawing symbol up here like a pencil. Since nothing's there, this is telling me, also by color since it's gray, that somehow I got locked out of my sketch. Now there's no reason to panic, stop, and start all over. I've had students quit on this because they don't know what to do here. Remember, as you're drawing, if you look to your left in your design tree, there is my sketch. All I have to do to reactivate my sketch is left click on this little icon, Sketch 1, and click on the very first box called Edit Sketch. And when you do that, the sketch will come back on so that you can actually go in and begin to manipulate your numbers. Okay, so again, if you get locked out of your sketch, no panic. Look to your left in your design tree, find where that sketch is located, left click, go to the first icon and hit Edit Sketch. So now at this point, I've got my sketch ready to go to the third dimension. I need to add some thickness to this. So let's look at this drawing back here. So what I'm doing is I've drawn the outside of this shape right here. Okay, so you can see, now what I haven't drawn is this corner. We're going to cut that off in the end. But what I did is I went from here, I drew over to here, I drew up, in, up, over, up, in, and back down. I've dimensioned it, so now what I want to do is add the third element, the thickness. Okay, well now if you go back to Solidworks, you're going to notice now we have a new tab right next to Sketch called Features. If you left click on Features, this is where you can do all the manipulation in the third dimension. Now right now on your first sketch, you're really limited on what you can do. You can either extrude it, which means add thickness. You can revolve it, which means pick a line and spin around that line, adding thickness. Or you can sweep it, which means follow a path and then add the thickness as you follow the path. In our case, we don't need to revolve it and we don't need to sweep it. We just want to be really basic here and add thickness. So we are going to click on the word Extruded Boss Base. When you do that, you're going to notice SOLIDWORKS automatically rotates it into an isometric position. Excuse me. And it shows you a ghost image of some thickness. Now that ghost image is actually at a thickness of 0.1, and that's right here in this dimension. Okay, that is the default. Now I want to add more than 0.1 thickness to this. So going back to my drawing here, I need to look at some other views. Now if I look here, it looks like here's my sketch on this front plane. This is my front plane where my cursor is going across. I want to add some thickness going back. Okay, so that thickness from the front to this back here is the distance C. So today our thickness is going to be 2.25. So going back into SOLIDWORKS, where it says D1, I'm going to put in 2.25 and hit enter. Now, The question I get asked a lot is, it doesn't matter which direction it goes. At this point, no, because right now all we're going to look for is the mass. As we progress forward and start talking about center of mass, yes, it will be important to pick the right direction. Really right now all I want to do is get this so it shows thickness. Okay, so now I have this yellow ghost image here at 2.25. Now to make this go solid and not be this ghost image, come up here to the green check mark and left click. Now, you're probably going to see yours looking like a block of wood. Somehow our templates got messed up and there was a material of balsa added on to this initial part. Okay, now you're going to notice in our note over here on this, it tells you that our material for this part is 2014 aluminum alloy. Every part we create, we are going to put a piece of material on there. This is really important because it's going to allow us to actually get a weight for it. If we do any simulations, we can actually use those factors. The material on there will give accurate readings on stress testing, frequency testing, heat testing, all kinds of things that Solidworks has built into it. But it's all contingent upon putting material on it. So in order to put material on, we have to go back to our design tree. And if you look towards the top of it, maybe about midway down, you're going to notice where it says balsa. That is currently the material that has been applied. To change it, what we're going to do is put our cursor over that word, right click, and say edit material. And what's going to happen, you're going to get a pop-up. And right now, the material that's been added on is balsa. That's under the word woods. As you can see, we have a pretty extensive list of materials that we can use. There's a ton of steels, there's tons of irons, aluminum alloys, copper alloys, and you can continue thumbing through and see there's all kinds of materials we can add to this. Now, we were told in our directions told to add a 2014 aluminum alloy. So I'm going to drop this arrowhead down, and right in numerical order, I'm coming down the list, I see a 2014 alloy. So what you're going to do to get the material to add on is left click on the alloy. And what you'll notice, you're going to start getting all this material over here to the right. Elastic modulus, Poisson's ratio, shear modulus, mass density, etc. For you right now, we're in the basic. We just want to add the material. But as we progress forward, and some of you become engineers, this will actually mean something to you. It's really important when we do actually analysis. Right now, I just want to add the alloy, hit apply, and then hit close. Okay, now if you look over here to your design tree, it should now say, instead of balsa, 2014 alloy. You should notice now your part also went gray. Now at this point, if I go back to my original part, I'm sitting right here. I've got the main shape, but as you can see, I've got to take a corner of this off. So I'm going to look at my top view because I'm looking straight down. It looks like I have to cut a 1x1 corner off. Well, to do that, I can now actually sketch a box on any one of these faces now. I can treat any one of these as a sketch face or like a piece of paper. What I'm going to do is I want to cut the corner off right here. So what I'm going to do is highlight this face right here. As you can see, it's going to turn blue. I'm going to go up to my sketch tab, turn on my sketch tab, and hit the word sketch. And then in order to turn this face flat to the screen, I'm going to hit space bar. I'm going to hit the normal 2. And what that did is it rotated this face so it's perfectly flush to the screen. Now what I want to do is I want to draw a box right here. And I can do that either with a line tool, or faster yet, I could use my corner rectangle tool. Now with my corner rectangle tool on, I'm going to connect it to this corner. You'll see the orange little button come up there. I'm going to attach, left click and pull up, left click again. Now my tool is still active, so I'm going to hit escape to stop. Now according to this drawing, I need to make that square 1 inch by 1 inch. So going back into SolidWorks, I'm going to turn on my Smart Dimension tool, click the bottom line here and drop, left click, 1, enter. Click the right line, pull to my right, left click, 1, enter. So now if I look at my sketch, I see all of my lines are black, which means that if you see down the corner here, fully defined. That is extremely important. SolidWorks wants everything in sketch mode to be fully defined. Right now I'm fully defined, which means I can now cut this corner off. Now I'm going to hit my space bar and I'm going to hit this little blue box in the corner. This is called isometric view. I do this so I can see this in this three-dimensional model. I like to see what I'm cutting. So I have a habit of space bar and going to my isometric before I cut or I extrude. Now what I'm going to do in this case is go back to my features tab, because again what we're doing is a three-dimensional cut. In order to do that I have to go to features. Okay, now remember, if I were to do an extrusion right now, all that's going to happen is add material. I need to cut material away. So instead of extrude boss base, I'm going to go to extruded cut. And now what you're going to see is a yellow box indicating what's going to be cut off. Now you'll also notice the distance that came in over here is 2.25. If you recall, the last number I input was 2.25 for my extrusion. Now in this case, blind means I'm telling it to go exactly 2.25 and stop. But in this case, I don't need that. What I'd rather do is drop it from blind, and I want to cut through all. I just want this block to cut all the way through. Now when you see that, go ahead and hit your green check mark, and you'll notice now the corner has gone. So at this point, if I look back at my PDF file and go back to the isometric view here, I have now finished this part. If I go back to Solidworks and look at my design tree, here you go. I have branch number 1 and branch number 2. Branch number 1 was a sketch and extrude. Branch number 2 was a sketch and a cut. So at this point, with the part being done, let's go through the saving process. And this will be the same for all the parts we do here. I'm going to go up to my little icon at the top. I'm going to drop this down and say Save As. I want you to save this in your H drive under your CAD folder. I would like you to right click and go New and create a folder called 3D Parts. When you see that 3D part folder now in your CAD folder, I want you to double click on that, and I want you to highlight this spot and type the following. And I prefer caps lock. You're not required to do this. I'm going to call this part 3-1 shift underscore my last name, and I'm putting the period there so I can keep it there. Okay, and I'm going to hit save. You'll notice now at the top your part has a name, plus the part name is now over here in design tree. Now what I want to do next is I want to get the weight of this part. I want to know how much it weighs. So again, if you look at your tabs at the top, there's a tab called Evaluate. Okay, we want to evaluate this part. We want to know some things about it. So I'm going to hit that tab. And logically, if you look at these icons at the top, you will see one that's called Mass Properties. I want to know how much this thing weighs, which means I need to find the mass. So I'm going to left click on the Mass Properties. And what you're going to see is a pop-up window jump right up in the center of the screen. Okay, and what it'll say up here is part 3-1 underscore your last name. And then more importantly, what it's going to tell you is the density of the material you're using, and then more importantly, the mass or the weight of the part. Today, this part weighs 0.84 pounds. As soon as you see this, I would like you to hit the word print. I want you to print this so that you can put this and staple it to the back of the drawing. In this case, I'm over here in L109, so I want to make sure I'm in lab 109. In our lab, we're 108. I'll go ahead and switch it over to L108. I say OK. It's going to go ahead and print. At this point, you'll run to the printer, grab this piece of paper, and bring it back to your desk. As soon as you've got that piece of paper, I would like you to go to this corner and hit the red X. Now at this point, we've got to kind of change gears, because now I don't need this file anymore. So I'm going to close that PDF file. I'm going to come back into my Schoology. I'm going to go back into my beginning SolidWorks. And now what I want to do is open up the Part 3-1 Drawing PDF. I'm going to left click on that. Again, I'm going to download it so I can go full screen. So I'll hit my download button. I'm going to do an open. At least I hope so. Do that one more time. Do an open with Adobe Acrobat Reader and say OK. And then pull my drawing up to the center of the screen. Now, what this is the answer key. We are going to create this drawing now. Now, most of you better start thinking, oh, this is just like what we just did before we left for break. I'm going to go ahead, open up this border, and I'm going to start taking my drawing tools and draw these shapes. We don't have to do that anymore. Now that we have a part, we can actually drag the part onto the paper and then just add dimensions and titles and be done with it. So now what I'm going to do is minimize this, minimize my Schoology, and I'm going to go to a File, New. So I'm going to go to the top bar and hit the word New. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put this on an A border. Now what's really important when we talk about the A border is knowing which units we used. And if you recall, we did this part in a GHSA, or an inch is what we use, inches. So we're going to use a GHSA inch as our border. So I'm going to left click on it. I see the preview over here to the right. I'm going to hit the word OK. Now, if you recall, before break, we normally went over here and hit the red X, and then we turned on our sketch tools, and we started drawing figures all over the paper. We're not doing that anymore. What I want here is this open document. You should be seeing your part in this folder right here. If you don't, you can always go and browse for it, click on it, and open it from there, okay? But in our case, since the part is already open, and I see it right here, I'm just going to go up to this little blue arrow that says Next and left click. Now, this is one of the most important steps, and this is what we'll be doing for pretty much the remainder of the year. I'll do a few manipulations down the road towards the end of the school year, but right now, all of the drawings we're going to do are going to be set up pretty much the same way. It's a 4-step process. The first step is we've got to identify what view we want to bring in. So we're going to start, like we did with our hand drawings, with the front view. That's right here in the center. So here's that unfolded box. There's my front, there's the left, there's the back. This is the right, here's the top, here's the bottom. We are going to start with our front view. Now, once I've clicked this box, I want to turn on the preview. And what the preview allows me to do is see the actual figure on my screen. Now, don't click anywhere here. I want this to keep moving around. Now, the first step then was front view. Second was turning on my preview. Step number 3, excuse me, is to go to display style. Now, it's defaulted to hidden lines removed. Remember, in our hand drawings, the hidden lines were all the dashed lines indicating cuts. We always want to have our hidden lines on. So to turn them on, I have to go to the second box right here where it says hidden lines visible and left click. The last step is the scale. Now, if you go back to our original drawing here, it says the scale should be 1:1. So I want to go back and make sure this right here, sorry, go back into my drawing here, the scale should be at 1:1. And right now it's showing a default. But if I had to change it, all you have to do is go custom scale, and you can change your scales. Okay, so we're going to stay at 1:1. So again, the 4 steps: front view, preview, hidden lines on, scale 1:1. Now, once you have that all dialed in, you can start placing the part. So what I'm going to do is go like we did in our front view. Now, there's no 1x1. You're just going to eyeball these into place. I'm going to start in the lower left-hand corner and left click. Pull straight up, left click. Pull down and to my right, left click. Pull up at a diagonal, left click. As soon as you have these views, hit escape to turn off your drawing tools. Okay, so what we just created here with a drag and drop was my front view, my top view, and my right side view. Now what I want you to notice is that these 3 views are locked together. If you recall in our front or in our hand drawing days, we were using projection lines to lock our views together. Okay? Solidworks has those in there, you just can't see them. Now, this view is called our isometric and can be moved anywhere on the sheet of paper by itself. Now, I need to manipulate this, because if you look at the drawing on our PDF file, this view is in color and it's smaller. As a matter of fact, it's at a scale of 1:2. So what I'm going to do is go into SolidWorks and we are going to manipulate this view. So how do we do that? Well, if you hover anywhere inside here, you're going to see an orange box pop up. If you just left click inside there and look to your left, Here is your display style. Okay, now we have right now hidden lines visible. I would like to go to shaded with edges. It will now turn gray with black edges. The scale should be at 1 to 2. Right now it's at 1 to 1. So now I'm going to go to custom scale, drop this down and do a 1 to 2. And now you'll notice these here are at 1 to 1. This one is now at 1 to 2. I will go ahead now and hit my check mark. I can drag this where I need to, so I'm going to kind of put it up in here in this corner. And now at this point, I'm going to go ahead and add in this note, part 3-1, isometric view, scale 1 to 2, material is 2014 aluminum alloy, and then we're going to type in the actual mass. So going back into SolidWorks, we go back to the annotation toolbar and hit my note tool. Now we've done this before in all our flat layout drawings. So I'm going to kind of blow up on this so you can see it. I'm going to left click and drop the box in here. And then I'm going to get the same setup I've done before. Font size, 12. Bold, underline, centered. Caps lock on. Part 3-1. Isometric view. Enter. Now I don't want these to be bold and underlined. Just that one line. So I'm going to take bold and underline off. Font size is still 12. It's still centered. We're going to type in scale. 1 shift:2. Enter. Material is 2014 aluminum alloy. Enter. Mass equals. Now we're not going to put those X's in there. Instead we're going to put in 0.84 and then our units, LBS short for pounds. As soon as you have that finished and typed, hit your green check mark, and now if you need to, you can move the drawing wherever you want. You can also left click and move your title wherever you need to. There is no set place for this. I just want you to make your drawing look nice and spaced. Now, we're not quite done here. Okay, go back to our original drawing. It looks like I have some dimensions to add here. So now what I'm going to do is go in, and using this front view, I'm going to turn on my Smart Dimension tool and begin placing the dimensions. In this case, I'm going to take the arrows to the inside by hitting the dots, but you also will notice on this file, these are all at 2 decimal places. So what I'm going to do is with this highlighted, I look to my left here and I see 0.123 document. I will drop this down to 0.12. I'm going to click from this line here to this line here. Pull up. I get 1.75. 0.123 to 0.12. I'll pull this over here to this side here. I get 0.5. I will take that from 0.123 to 0.12. Let me look at this. Okay, I'm going to go from, I'll flip the arrowheads to the inside. Sorry, go there. I'm going to go from the very top here to the very bottom. Delete that, sorry. Very top line to the very bottom line and pull to my right. Take it from 2.000, 0.123 to 0.12. Hit this top line. Take it from 0.75 to 0.12 and flip the arrows. I'm going to go from the left-hand side to the right-hand side and pull up. I get 3.300, 0.123 to 0.12. Now you'll notice some of my dimensions suddenly have moved. No panic. I'm just going to take left click and pull, and you can adjust them how you need them. So going back to my drawing, it looks like I have all those dimensions on there. So this is done and this is done. Now it looks like I have to add a 1, and a 2.25. So going back to my top view, I'm going to click on this line and pull to my right. Okay, it's supposed to be 1.00. Go to my 0.123, 0.12. Drop this down. 1.00 from 123 to 12. And then from this very top line here to the very bottom line here, pull to my right. And I get 2.250. Change that to 0.12 to 2.25. Now, what I like to do is I like to look to make sure nothing looks too close together. So I'm going to take and kind of pull this, and you can see I get on the curve, or on the edge of the box here, a little X comes up. When you see that, just hold down your left mouse button, and you can move your views wherever you need to. So when I'm done, I'm going to finish off my spacing so that all my parts and dimensions have plenty of space between them, so nothing looks too crowded. And at this point, F key, this is a completed drawing, except for one last thing, the title block. So going in here, we are going to change this title to Solidworks drawing, or part drawing. I'm going to change it to font 14. Type in Solidworks part drawing, space dash space, part 3-1. Click outside and adjust it as you need to with a left click and hold. GHS student, double click, will be your first initial and last name, just as you need to. Today's date is 10/24/19. And period is whatever period you're currently sitting in. Hit your F key, and now at this point, your drawing is complete. At this point, I'm going to hit a file save. I'm going to get it in the same folder. I'm going to leave the same name. All it changed was this back part here. I'm going to leave that alone. I want my parts and my drawings to match each other. So I'm just going to hit save, and now my drawing is done. So the last step of this is to print it. So I'm going to go to File, Print. I'm going to make sure I'm printing to the correct printer in the correct room. And I'm going to say OK. At this point, you can go to your printer, grab your piece of paper, come back to your desk, grab your mass properties, and staple it to the back of the sheet of paper and put this in the collection box. That takes care of part 3-1, the part and the drawing. As soon as you have that complete, get it turned in. I'll be putting a grade on this week. Look forward into part 3-2, which will be coming up shortly. Good luck. If you have questions, don't be afraid to ask.